All right, diving in. We're taking a deep look into health, fitness, and living longer today. You sent in some really interesting stuff, especially those parts from the Big Book of Health and Fitness by Philip Maffetone. And he really kind of throws out this idea right away that all this healthcare we have is more like disease care. Like we wait till people are sick and then try to fix it, not prevent it. What are your initial thoughts?
Oh, definitely thought-provoking. It's interesting how Maffetone ties this back to, like, our history as humans.
Okay, yeah.
He uses this example how our bodies are basically still set up for a hunter-gatherer life. Like,
Yeah.
tons of activity and all natural foods, none of this processed stuff. Makes you think about our lives today, huh?
For sure. And Maffetone doesn't hold back with some strong examples. He's talking cigarettes, sugary drinks, even stuff we get over the counter at the pharmacy,
Yeah.
all chipping away at our health.
Right, and that leads into his big point. We should be living to, like, 120 years old, naturally.
Whoa, okay.
Dying before that. In his view, that means you got sick from something preventable. It's not just feeling good, it's about how long we could potentially live.
Big statement. He also makes this separation between being fit versus being truly healthy. Tells this story about running the New York City Marathon.
Oh, right.
He was in shape, but neglected his health to get there, and it backfired. Makes you think, are we focusing on the right things?
Definitely. Fitness without health, or can we have both?
Crucial point.
Yeah.
Let's get into this 2-week test he talks about to figure out if you're intolerant to carbs. How's that work?
So you cut out a bunch of foods high in carbohydrates for 2 weeks. Then you really pay attention to how you feel. Maffetone's got this whole list of things to watch for. Getting tired after meals, feeling bloated, can't concentrate, even gaining belly fat. It's fascinating. He goes as far as comparing sugar addiction to, like, being addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
They light up the same pleasure parts in our brains. Think about those crazy cravings, overeating, and how hard it is to quit sweets.
Kind of scary when you put it that way.
It is, and this leads us to fats. Maffetone says it's all about balance, getting the right kinds. He's warning against too much omega-6, which is in a lot of vegetable oils. And he's saying saturated fat is actually good for us in certain ways.
Okay, that's going against what a lot of people think.
Right. He ties this to inflammation, how some foods cause it, some fight it, like those cruciferous veggies, broccoli, cauliflower, that kind of thing.
Powerhouse veggies. He's also got this whole thing about protein. Says maybe the official recommendations aren't enough, especially if you're active.
I noticed that. He really pushes eggs as a complete protein,
Yeah.
packed with good stuff. He also says watch out for fish that's farmed or genetically modified, could have antibiotics or other nasty stuff in it.
Makes you think twice about where your food comes from.
For sure.
And sticking with food, Maffetone's all about those vegetables and fruits, at least 10 servings every day. And the fresher, the better.
Absolutely.
He gives a shout out to organic food, too, saying studies show those veggies have more nutrients.
And we can't forget fiber. That's key for good gut health.
Right. He talks about all these different types of fiber, what they do, and how important those prebiotics are to feed the good bacteria in our gut. So, how much fiber do you think you get each day? Something to ponder, right? But here's where it gets a little controversial. Maffetone doesn't think organic always equals healthy. He had this experience at Whole Foods. Some products, yeah, they're technically organic, but still full of iffy ingredients.
So even with the organic label, gotta look closer.
Exactly. It's not a free pass. And lastly, he points to the Mediterranean diet as a good model for eating lots of fresh produce, olive oil, and a bit of wine even.
Classic.
All of this really gets us thinking, what's the next step in this exploration?
You know, Maffetone keeps coming back to this idea of energy. Let's dig into that and what he really means by it and how our choices affect it.
Energy, huh? Okay, I'm curious. I'm guessing he's not just talking about, like, feeling peppy.
No, not quite. He's going deeper, talking about the energy that powers every single cell in us, like what drives our metabolism, keeps our organs running smoothly, all of that.
So it's tied to what we eat then?
Absolutely. Every bite, he's saying, either contributes to that energy or takes away from it. It's about choosing foods that actually fuel us, not drain us.
I remember he talked about how our diets changed over time. Something about those big revolutions, agricultural, industrial.
He gets into that. So first, the agricultural revolution, that was like 5,000 years ago. We went from hunting and gathering to farming, raising animals. Grains like barley became a big part of what people ate.
Okay.
Then comes the Industrial Revolution, and suddenly we're processing those carbs like crazy. White flour, sugar, that kind of stuff takes over.
And he's saying that's a problem.
He sees a disconnect. For most of human history, we ate way less carbs, especially the refined kind. more natural fats, protein, veggies. These super processed foods are a pretty new thing.
Huh.
He even talks about the science behind it. Just tasting sugar, that can make your insulin spike. Insulin's the hormone that takes sugar from your blood and either turns it into energy or stores it as fat. So you eat sugary stuff or lots of carbs, it breaks down fast, turns into glucose in your blood. That signals your body to pump out more insulin.
What happens if your body can't keep up with all that glucose?
That's when you might see those signs of carb intolerance we were talking about. Fatigue, bloating, foggy brain. Basically, your system gets overloaded with all that sugar.
Didn't he mention something about a glycemic index?
He did. It ranks foods based on how fast they raise your blood sugar. And this is where it gets tricky, because not all carbs are created equal.
Right.
Those highly processed ones, white bread, sugary cereals, they tend to have a high glycemic index. So they cause those big, fast spikes in blood sugar and insulin.
But less processed choices like whole grains, legumes, veggies, they have a lower glycemic index, so the energy release is more gradual and sustained.
Precisely. It's about knowing how different foods affect your blood sugar and making choices that help you feel good and stay healthy long term.
So it really is all about balance. And speaking of balance, Maffetone really tries to set the record straight about fat. It's not all bad, right?
Right. He really stresses getting a variety of natural fats, making sure we're not missing those essential fatty acids like omega-3s and omega-6s. And remember those A, B, and C fats we talked about?
Oh, right.
He breaks it down how each type plays a role in inflammation in our bodies. So A fats, mainly from vegetable oils, they get converted into these good guys, group 1 eicosanoids, which are anti-inflammatory.
But there's a catch, I bet.
There is. If you're lacking certain nutrients or you're super stressed out, those A fats can turn into B fats. And B fats, you need some, but too many, and they actually cause inflammation. It's like they're helpful for healing, but too much is bad.
And then C fats, they're mostly in fish oil. They get turned into group 3 eicosanoids, which are also anti-inflammatory. So it's like this balancing act, keeping all these fats in check to manage inflammation and stay healthy.
Exactly. Nutrition is complicated. It's not as simple as good fat, bad fat. Our bodies need fat, but we have to choose the right kinds and get the amounts right.
He even questions the idea that we need to eat tons of protein to be healthy.
Right. He thinks the official recommendations from the USDA might not be enough for people who are active or have a lot of muscle.
Didn't he have some kind of formula to figure out how much protein each person needs?
He does. It takes into account how big you are, how much muscle you have, how active you are. So you can personalize it instead of just following a general rule. And of course, he loves eggs. Great source of protein, loaded with good stuff.
Makes sense. But he's not so keen on farm-to-fish or genetically modified fish. Worried about those antibiotics and other things that might be in them. Again, makes you think about where your food's coming from.
Definitely. And moving on to another important food group, Maffetone has a lot to say about vegetables and fruits.
I bet he does.
He's a big fan of eating a variety of them, at least 10 servings a day, and the fresher, the better.
Fresh and raw whenever possible.
Absolutely. And he even talks about cooking methods that help preserve the nutrients, like steaming or stir-frying.
Good tips. He's
Yeah.
also into organic foods, right? Saying they're often more nutritious.
He cites studies showing that organic vegetables often have higher levels of certain nutrients. He even did his own research and found much higher levels of things like folic acid in organic kale and spinach compared to non-organic.
That's pretty convincing. But remember, he also cautions us not to assume that just because something's organic, it's automatically healthy.
Right. He tells that story about his trip to Whole Foods. Some of the products there were certified organic, but when he looked closer, they still had some questionable ingredients.
So even with organic foods, we have to be savvy shoppers. Read those labels carefully.
Absolutely. It's about being informed and making choices that align with our health goals. Okay, so like a wrap-up, right? From Maffetone's book, The Big Book of Health and Fitness, here are 10 big things to think about.
Perfect. Hope our listeners walk away with some stuff they could actually use, you know?
All right, number one, think of healthcare today as disease care. It's about waiting till you're sick and then trying to fix it, not preventing it in the first place. You got to be in charge of your own health.
Makes sense. So what's next?
Number two, remember where we came from. Evolutionarily, we're still basically hunter-gatherers. Get moving and eat real food. Ditch the processed stuff.
Back to the basics. I like it. Number three.
Challenge this idea that we're supposed to get old and sick. Maffetone's arguing humans can naturally live to, like, 120. Don't settle for less than your best health.
Wow. Okay, that's a new way to look at it. What else?
Number 4, there's a difference between fitness and true health. Don't chase fitness if it's hurting your overall well-being. You can have both.
Like we were talking about before, balance is key. What's number 5?
Try out that 2-week test. It's to see if maybe you're intolerant to carbohydrates. Cut those foods out, then really pay attention to how you feel. Might be surprising.
A good little experiment you can do at home. Hit me with number 6.
Sugar. It's addictive, plain and simple. Affects your brain like drugs do. Watch out for those cravings. Be aware of how much you're actually eating.
It's in everything, right? What about fats?
Okay, number 7. Balance is key with fats too. Don't be scared of them, but choose wisely. Watch out for too much omega-6 from those veggie oils, and don't forget, some saturated fat is good for you.
Okay, so fat is back, but got to be smart about it. What's next?
Number 8, protein's important, especially if you're moving your body a lot. Maffetone thinks those standard recommendations might not be enough for everyone. And eggs, those are your friends, packed with protein and nutrients.
God, got to get those veggies and fruits in, right?
Absolutely. Number 9, eat a ton of veggies and fruits every day, at least 10 servings. Fresh and raw is best whenever you can.
Love to see those colors on the plate. And last but not least, number 10.
This one's important. Just because something says organic doesn't mean it's automatically healthy. Be a smart shopper, read those labels, make sure the ingredients are actually good for you.
Great advice. Got to be in the know. So that's our 10-point recap. Thanks for breaking that down.
No problem. Happy to do it.
And a big thanks to you, our listeners, for sending in all this great stuff to talk about. If even small changes can make you healthier and help you live longer, what one change will you make today? Until next time, take care.